Welcome to Monk's Temple. Let yourself arrive. Feel your body resting exactly where you are. Feel your breath moving in and out without any effort. Just notice. Right now, in this moment, nothing is missing. This awareness that hears my voice, that notices your breath, that is aware of itself, this is the door. There is a story from the monasteries of Sri Lanka about a man who searched for 30 years for a treasure he had never lost. He heard of a priceless jewel in a distant cave. He left everything, crossed mountains, endured hunger. Finally, he found the cave and discovered the jewel. As he held it, he began to laugh. It was exactly like one he had carried in his pocket since childhood. He had forgotten it was there. He had traveled across the world to find what he already possessed. This is the first secret of the spiritual journey. You are not becoming someone new. You are remembering who you have always been. The work is not creation. It is excavation. The Buddha, sitting under the Bodhi tree 25 centuries ago, did not become enlightened in the way we imagine. He did not receive something from outside. He did not transform into a different being. He simply woke up to what had always been true. He saw through the illusion of separation. He recognized that the feeling of being a small, isolated self, trapped inside a body, fighting against the world, this feeling is a dream. And like any dream, it seems completely real while you are in it. But when you wake, you see the tiger chasing you was never actually there. This is the first path. It is called waking up. Waking up means exploring consciousness itself. Most of us live our entire lives in one small room of a vast mansion. We think ordinary waking reality is the only reality. But the contemplative traditions, from Buddhist monasteries to mystical schools across the world, all describe something more. They describe layers of consciousness, each one more open, more free, more vast than the last. Think about dreaming. In a dream, you are completely convinced everything is real. You feel terror, joy, confusion. Then you wake up and laugh at how convincing it was. The Buddha's insight is that the same thing is happening right now. We are dreaming that we are separate. We are dreaming that we are inadequate. We are dreaming that we need to become something other than what we already are. Waking up means seeing through the dream. In the Buddhist tradition, this is called Bodhi. It is not a belief. It is not a philosophy. It is a direct experience available to every human being who undertakes sincere practice. The path of waking up has been walked by countless seekers over thousands of years. It leads to a radical discovery, that what you take to be yourself, your thoughts, your emotions, your body, your history, is not the whole story. Beneath all of that, there is awareness itself. And that awareness is not personal. It is the same awareness that looks out through every pair of eyes, that hears through every pair of ears, that feels through every heart. If something in this is speaking to you, if you feel the quiet call to go deeper, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. It helps us continue this work, and it ensures we walk this path together. Just a click, and you will not miss the next step. But here is where the map becomes essential. For thousands of years, spiritual seekers believed that waking up alone was enough. They thought that if you could just experience unity with all things, everything else would take care of itself. But history tells us something different. Many great enlightened masters of the past supported slavery. They were sexist, racist, superstitious. They had profound realizations of non-duality, yet they lived in ways that caused tremendous harm. How is this possible? The answer is that waking up is only one dimension of becoming whole. You can have profound spiritual experiences and still be psychologically immature. You can touch the infinite and still be a child emotionally. This brings us to the second path, the path of growing up. Growing up is about the evolution of your identity. It is about the stages of development every human being passes through. Just as your body grows through predictable stages, so does your sense of self. And each stage is a lens through which you interpret reality. At the earliest stage, the world revolves around you. Your needs, your feelings, your desires are the only things that are truly real. Every baby is born at this stage. It is not wrong. It is simply the beginning. If development goes well, the circle expands. You begin to see that others have inner lives as real as your own. You begin to identify with your group, your family, your tribe, your nation. This is the ethnocentric stage. It is a massive leap forward. You can now love others, sacrifice for others. But there is a limit. Your care extends only to your group. Outsiders do not count the same way. They are less than. And because they are less than, it becomes acceptable to harm them. If you are listening to this, you may already sense that this lens is broken. You may already be reaching towards something more universal. This reaching is the beginning of the world-centric stage. At this stage, your circle of care expands to include all human beings. You understand that a child on the other side of the planet has the same worth as your own child. This is not just an idea. It is a genuine expansion of identity. The great teachers of history operated from this stage. The Buddha did not teach only for his clan. He taught for all beings, without exception. He had not only woken up to unity with the divine, he had grown up to a stage where that unity could be expressed as universal compassion. But even this is not the whole story. There is a third path, and a fourth. We will walk them together as this journey unfolds. For now, rest in the awareness that you are already on the path. The fact that you are here, listening, seeking, is proof that something in you knows there is more. Trust that. It will guide you. Let us return to the second path, the path of growing up. But before we go further, I want to tell you a story about a woman I once met at a meditation retreat in the mountains of Northern California. Her name was Sarah, and she had been practicing meditation for over 15 years. She could sit for hours in perfect stillness. She had experienced profound states of bliss and emptiness. Teachers praised her dedication. But Sarah had a problem she could not solve. Every time she visited her mother, within 15 minutes of walking through the door, she would regress into the same angry, wounded teenager she had been at 16. All her meditation, all her insight, all her awakening, it dissolved the moment her mother made a passive-aggressive comment about her weight or her career choices. Sarah came to the retreat hoping that more meditation would finally fix this. She wanted to meditate her way out of her childhood wounds. And this is what I had to tell her, as gently as I could. Meditation will not fix your relationship with your mother. Enlightenment will not make your childhood wounds disappear. Waking up opens the door to the infinite, but it does not automatically heal the finite. For that, you need something else. You need to grow up. Growing up means developing the psychological structures that allow you to navigate the world with maturity and wisdom. It means expanding your identity from the small self of childhood to something larger, more inclusive, more compassionate. And this development happens in stages. You cannot skip them. You cannot meditate your way to stage 5 while you are still stuck at stage 2. The only way through is through. Let me give you another example. There was a man named James who came to therapy because he could not maintain a romantic relationship. He was intelligent, successful, spiritually curious. But every woman he dated eventually left him, complaining that he was emotionally unavailable. James was confused. He felt deeply. He cried at movies. He cared about social justice. How could he be emotionally unavailable? What James discovered, after months of difficult work, was that his emotional availability was a performance. He had learned, as a young boy, that showing real vulnerability was dangerous. His father punished weakness. His mother dismissed his feelings. So James built a beautiful mask of sensitivity that fooled everyone, including himself. But beneath the mask, there was a terrified child who did not trust anyone to really see him. He was stuck at an egocentric stage of emotional development, even while his intellect and his spiritual practice operated at much higher levels. His heart had not grown up. This is what the Buddhist tradition calls the problem of the two arrows. The Buddha taught that when we are struck by an arrow, we feel pain. That is the first arrow. It is unavoidable. But then we shoot ourselves with a second arrow, the arrow of our reaction to the pain. We tell ourselves stories about how unfair it is. We blame ourselves or others. We create suffering on top of the pain. The first arrow is life. The second arrow is immaturity. Growing up means learning to stop shooting the second arrow. It means developing the capacity to meet life's difficulties without adding layers of self-created suffering. And this requires more than meditation. It requires psychological work. It requires examining the stories you have been telling yourself since childhood. It requires facing the parts of yourself you have been hiding. It requires expanding your identity beyond the small, defensive ego that believes it must protect itself from a hostile world. Think of it like this. Imagine you are living in a small house with no windows. You think this house is the entire world. Then someone hands you a key and shows you a door you never noticed before. You open it and find another room, much larger, with windows looking out onto a garden. This is what growing up feels like. Each new stage of development is a new room in the house of your identity. And with each room, your perspective expands. You see more. You understand more. You are capable of more. The tragedy is that most people never find the key. They live their entire lives in that first small room, believing it is all there is. They react to life from the same limited perspective they had as children. They blame others for their problems. They cling to their tribe against the outsiders. They cannot understand why they keep suffering the same patterns over and over. But you are here. You are listening. You are seeking. And that means something in you already knows there is more. Something in you is reaching for the key. The path of growing up is not easy. It requires honesty. It requires humility. It requires the willingness to see yourself as you actually are, not as you pretend to be. But it is also the most rewarding journey you will ever undertake. Because as you grow, your capacity for love grows. Your capacity for joy grows. your capacity for freedom grows. The Buddha did not teach that life is suffering. He taught that there is a path out of suffering. And that path requires both waking up to your true nature and growing up to your full humanity. They are two wings of the same bird. With only one wing, you will fly in circles. With both, you can soar. Now we arrive at the third path, the one that is most often neglected, most often misunderstood, and most urgently needed. This is the path of cleaning up. Let me tell you about a man named Michael. Michael was a successful corporate lawyer in his early 50s. He had a beautiful home, a loving family, and a reputation for being calm and reasonable under pressure. Everyone admired him. Everyone thought he had it all together. But Michael had a secret. Several times a year, usually after a particularly stressful case, he would explode. Not at work. Never at work. He would come home and find some small thing out of place, a dish left in the sink, a light left on. And he would scream at his wife and children with a rage that terrified everyone, including himself. Afterward, he would be filled with shame. He would apologize profusely. He would promise it would never happen again. And then, months later, it would happen again. Michael came to therapy because he was afraid he was losing his mind. He had tried meditation. He had tried exercise. He had tried reading self-help books. Nothing worked. The rage kept coming back. What Michael discovered, through years of patient work, was that the rage was not coming from nowhere. It was coming from a part of himself he had locked away decades ago. When Michael was 7 years old, his father, an alcoholic, would fly into violent rages. Little Michael learned very quickly that expressing any anger of his own was dangerous. His father would punish him severely for any sign of defiance. So Michael did what any child would do. He buried his anger. He locked it in the basement of his psyche and threw away the key. He became the calm, reasonable, agreeable boy that everyone loved. He forgot the anger was even there. But the anger did not forget him. It grew in the darkness. It fed on every injustice, every slight, every frustration that Michael experienced but could not express. And eventually, it became strong enough to break through the door. It exploded, not at the people who deserved it, not at the situations that caused it, but at the safest targets available, the people who loved him and would not leave. This is the shadow. This is what we must clean up. The Buddhist tradition does not speak directly about the shadow in the way modern psychology does. The Buddha taught about the three poisons, greed, hatred, and delusion, and he offered practices for uprooting them. But the psychological understanding of repression, of disowned parts of the self, of the unconscious, this is a more recent discovery. And it is essential for completing the map. Cleaning up means going into the basement of your psyche and opening the boxes you have been avoiding for years, sometimes for decades. It means reclaiming the parts of yourself that you disowned because they were too painful, too shameful, too dangerous to express. It means making friends with your anger, your sadness, your fear, your desire, not acting them out, but acknowledging them, feeling them, integrating them. There is a story about a monk who went to his teacher and said, "I have been meditating for 20 years, and I still feel anger sometimes. What am I doing wrong?" The teacher said, "Nothing. The question is not whether you feel anger. The question is whether you are possessed by it." This is the goal of cleaning up. Not to eliminate difficult emotions, but to stop being possessed by them. Not to become a perfect person with no shadow, but to become a whole person who knows their shadow and can hold it with compassion. Let me give you another example. A woman named Elena came to a workshop I was leading. She was in her 40s, a successful artist, deeply spiritual. She told me she had been practicing loving-kindness meditation for years, sending compassion to all beings, and she felt genuinely loving most of the time. But there was one problem. She could not stand her neighbor. Every time she saw this woman, she would feel a surge of irrational irritation. She tried sending her loving kindness. It made it worse. She tried avoiding her. That was impossible. She tried pretending the feeling wasn't there. That just made her tense. I asked Elena to describe the neighbor. She launched into a list of complaints. The neighbor was loud, attention-seeking, dramatic, always talking about her problems, always making everything about herself. As Elena spoke, I noticed something. The more she described the neighbor, the more animated she became. There was a kind of energy in her voice that was not there when she talked about her loving-kindness practice. I asked her a simple question. Is it possible, I said, that this woman embodies something you have never allowed yourself to be? Elena was silent for a long time. Then she began to cry. She told me about her childhood, about being the quiet one, the good one, the one who never made trouble. She had learned early that being loud, being dramatic, asking for attention, these things were not allowed. So she had buried them. And now, every time she saw her neighbor, she was seeing her own disowned self. The neighbor was not the problem. The neighbor was the mirror. This is how projection works. Whatever we cannot accept in ourselves, we will see in others and react against. The intensity of the reaction is a measure of how deeply the trait has been buried. If something in another person barely registers, it is probably not part of your shadow. If it triggers an overwhelming emotional response, whether hatred or adoration, you can be certain you are looking at yourself. Cleaning up is the work of reclaiming these projections. It is the work of saying, this person I cannot stand, they are showing me something I have not been willing to see in myself. It is the work of saying, this person I idealize, they are showing me something I have not been willing to claim in myself. It is humble work. It is difficult work. And it is the only path to genuine authenticity. The Buddha taught that the root of suffering is craving and aversion. We crave what we want. We avert what we fear. But what we do not see is that the things we avert most strongly are often parts of ourselves. We are not averse to others. We are averse to the mirrors they hold up. Cleaning up means learning to look into the mirror without flinching. It means making peace with every part of who you are. Let me tell you about a man named David. David was a meditation teacher, highly respected, with students all over the world. He had spent decades in monasteries, had done multiple long retreats, and spoke with undeniable authority about the nature of consciousness. People came from far away to sit at his feet. But David had a problem he could not solve. Every few years, he would become involved in a scandal. Not a public scandal, nothing that would reach his students. But in his private life, he would find himself in complicated, often hurtful relationships. He would break promises. He would lie to those closest to him. He would act in ways that completely contradicted everything he taught. Each time, David would do intensive practice. He would meditate for months, vowing to purify his mind, to uproot the defilements once and for all. And each time, the pattern would eventually repeat. David could not understand why his profound spiritual realizations did not translate into ethical behavior. He had woken up. He had, by his own account, touched the formless. But something was still broken. What David did not understand was that waking up does not automatically clean up. You can have profound insights into the nature of reality and still have unexamined shadows. You can experience non-dual bliss and still be driven by unconscious patterns. The two paths are distinct. They must be walked together. This brings us to the fourth path, the one that integrates all the others. It is called showing up. Showing up means bringing your whole self into the world. It means taking the awareness you have cultivated through waking up, the maturity you have developed through growing up, the wholeness you have recovered through cleaning up, and actually living it. It means finding your unique contribution and offering it, despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, despite the risk of failure. There is a story about a woman named Grace. Grace was a nurse in a large city hospital. She was good at her job, compassionate and competent. But she had a secret longing. Since she was a young girl, she had loved to write. She filled journals with poems and stories, never showing them to anyone. They were her private refuge, her way of making sense of the world. As she grew older, the longing to share her writing grew stronger. But so did the fear. Who was she to think anyone would want to read what she wrote? She was just a nurse. She had no training, no credentials, no connections. The voice in her head told her she would be humiliated. For years, Grace kept writing in secret. The journals multiplied. The longing became a kind of ache. Finally, at 55, she became ill. Nothing life-threatening, but serious enough to keep her home for several months. During that time, alone with herself, she realized something. The fear of humiliation was not going to kill her. But the regret of never trying just might. When she recovered, Grace did something terrifying. She took one of her stories, typed it up, and submitted it to a small literary magazine. She expected rejection. What she got, months later, was an acceptance letter. The story was published. People she did not know wrote to her, saying it had moved them. One reader said it made her feel less alone in her own struggles. Grace continued to write. She published a collection of stories. She began teaching creative writing to other nurses, helping them find their own voices. She did not become famous. She did not become rich. But she became herself. She shone up. This is the fourth path. It is the path of vocation, in the deepest sense of the word. Vocation comes from the Latin vocare, meaning to call. It is not about what you do for money. It is about what you are called to do, regardless of money. It is the unique contribution that only you can make, because only you have walked your particular path, only you have your particular combination of gifts and wounds, only you have your particular voice. The Buddhist tradition speaks of bodhisattvas, beings who, having touched enlightenment, vow to remain in the world to help all beings. This is the ultimate expression of showing up. It is not about escaping the world. It is about returning to the world, fully, with open eyes and an open heart, and offering whatever you have to offer. But showing up does not require you to become a bodhisattva. It does not require you to start a movement or write a book or change careers. It simply requires you to stop hiding. To stop waiting until you are ready. To stop believing the voice that tells you that you have nothing to offer. Because that voice is the voice of the unexamined shadow. That voice is the voice of the parts of yourself you have not yet integrated. And the only way to silence it is to walk through it. There is a Zen story about a student who asked his teacher, "What is the most important part of practice?" The teacher said, "Keep returning." The student said, "Returning to what?" The teacher said, "To yourself. To your seat. To your breath. To your life. Keep returning, again and again, no matter how many times you wander off." This is showing up. It is not about perfection. It is about returning. It is about continuing to show up for your own life, even when it is hard, even when you are scared, even when you have no idea what you are doing. The four paths, waking up, growing up, cleaning up, showing up, are not separate journeys. They are four strands of one rope. Woven together, they are strong enough to hold you through anything. Ignored, any one of them can become the weak link that breaks under pressure. You have already begun. You are here, listening, seeking. That is showing up. Keep going. Now we must speak about something that most spiritual teachings leave out. We must speak about the darkness. Not the darkness of evil, but the darkness of the unknown within ourselves. The places we do not want to look. The parts we have spent a lifetime pretending do not exist. Let me tell you about a woman named Patricia. Patricia was a healer. She worked with trauma survivors, helping them reclaim their lives. She was compassionate, skilled, deeply respected. But Patricia had a secret she had never told anyone. When she was alone, late at night, she would sometimes have fantasies of violence. Not against anyone specific. Just images of destruction, of chaos, of things breaking. These fantasies terrified her. She thought they meant something was wrong with her, that she was secretly a bad person, that if anyone knew, they would reject her. Patricia came to a teacher I know, desperate to make these fantasies go away. She had tried meditating on loving kindness. She had tried positive affirmations. She had tried suppressing them. Nothing worked. The fantasies kept returning, sometimes stronger than before. The teacher asked Patricia a simple question. "What if," he said, "these fantasies are not your enemy? What if they are trying to tell you something?" Patricia was confused. How could fantasies of violence be trying to tell her something? The teacher explained that the psyche is not random. Every image, every impulse, every fantasy carries meaning. The question is not how to get rid of them. The question is what they are asking you to see. Patricia agreed to explore. With the teacher's guidance, she sat with the fantasies instead of running from them. She asked them what they wanted. And what emerged, over time, was shocking. The fantasies were not about hurting others. They were about her own unexpressed rage at having been hurt herself. As a child, Patricia had been powerless. She had been at the mercy of adults who should have protected her but did not. She had never been allowed to express her anger. It had been too dangerous. So the anger had gone underground. It had transformed into these fantasies, these images of destruction, because destruction was the only language it had. Patricia did not become a violent person by exploring this. She became more whole. She reclaimed a part of herself that had been locked away for decades. And as she reclaimed it, the fantasies lost their power. They did not disappear entirely, but they no longer terrified her. They became visitors instead of tyrants. This is the paradox of cleaning up. The things we fear most within ourselves are often the very things that hold the key to our freedom. The anger we have repressed, if we befriend it, becomes healthy boundaries. The sadness we have avoided, if we feel it, becomes deep compassion. The fear we have denied, if we acknowledge it, becomes wisdom. The Buddhist tradition has a teaching about the demon Mara. Mara is the tempter, the destroyer, the one who tries to keep the Buddha from enlightenment. In the stories, Mara appears with his armies, his weapons, his seductions. And the Buddha does not fight him. He does not run from him. He simply touches the ground and says, "I see you." And Mara disappears. Not because he is defeated, but because he is seen. This is the practice. When the difficult parts of yourself arise, the shame, the rage, the envy, the fear, you do not fight them. You do not run from them. You touch the ground of awareness and say, "I see you." And in that seeing, something shifts. The demon becomes a visitor. The shadow becomes a teacher. Let me give you another example. A man named Robert came to a retreat I was leading. He was successful, confident, articulate. But he had a problem he could not solve. He was terrified of public speaking. Not just nervous, paralyzed. His heart would race, his palms would sweat, his mind would go blank. He had turned down promotions, avoided opportunities, all because of this fear. Robert had tried everything. He had taken courses, practiced visualization, even seen a hypnotherapist. Nothing worked. The fear was too deep. I asked Robert to tell me about the first time he remembered feeling this fear. He thought for a moment and then told a story. When he was 8 years old, he was in a school play. He had one line. He practiced it for weeks. The night of the performance, he walked onto the stage, looked out at the audience, and forgot the line completely. There was silence. Then laughter. Not mean laughter, just the awkward laughter of an audience unsure what to do. But to 8-year-old Robert, it was devastating. He felt humiliated. He felt exposed. He felt like he had failed in front of everyone. That moment had lodged itself in Robert's psyche like a splinter. Every time he faced an audience, the splinter was activated. The 8-year-old boy was still there, terrified of being laughed at again. Robert had spent 40 years trying to protect that boy, never realizing he was still carrying him. The work was not to make the fear go away. The work was to go back to that 8-year-old boy and offer him what he never got: comfort, reassurance, the knowledge that he was okay even if he forgot his line. Robert did this through visualization, through journaling, through talking to his younger self with the compassion he had never received. It took time. It took tears. But gradually, the fear began to loosen. The next time he had to speak in public, his heart still raced, but it was manageable. The boy was no longer alone on the stage. The shadow is not your enemy. It is the part of you that has been waiting, sometimes for decades, to be seen. Your anger wants to protect you. Your fear wants to keep you safe. Your shame wants you to belong. They are not bad. They are just young. They are parts of you that got stuck at an earlier stage, and they need you to grow up and include them. This is the work of a lifetime. And it is the most important work you will ever do. We have walked through waking up, growing up, cleaning up, and showing up. But there is one more layer we must explore, one that weaves through all the others and holds them together. It is the layer of integration. It is the recognition that these four paths are not separate destinations but four movements of one dance. Let me tell you about a man named Thomas. Thomas was a seeker in the truest sense. He had spent 30 years exploring every spiritual tradition he could find. He had sat in Zen monasteries, danced with Sufis, studied with shamans in the Amazon. He had profound experiences, visions, insights, states of bliss that lasted for days. He had also spent years in therapy, unraveling his childhood wounds, learning to feel his feelings, reclaiming his shadow. By any measure, Thomas had done the work. And yet, he felt stuck. He felt like he was circling, covering the same ground again and again, without making real progress. Thomas came to a teacher I know and described his predicament. The teacher listened patiently and then said, "You have been collecting experiences. Now it is time to live them." Thomas did not understand. He had been living his experiences, hadn't he? The teacher shook his head. "You have been having experiences and then moving on to the next experience. You have been collecting insights like someone collects stamps. But you have not let them change you. You have not let them become flesh." This is the great danger of the spiritual path. We can become collectors of experiences. We can meditate for hours, attend retreat after retreat, read book after book, and still remain fundamentally unchanged. The experiences enter, but they do not digest. They do not become part of our bones, our blood, our daily actions. The Buddha spoke of this. He said that studying the path is not the same as walking it. He compared it to a man who talks about water but dies of thirst. The talking is not the drinking. The mapping is not the journey. At some point, you have to stop collecting and start living. There is a story about a famous violinist who was asked how he became so accomplished. He said, "I practiced 8 hours a day for 40 years. But the real work was not in the practice. The real work was in the living. Every relationship, every disappointment, every joy, I let it all pass through me and into the music. The music is just my life, played through strings. This is integration. This is letting your life become your practice." Let me give you another example. A woman named Helen came to a retreat I was leading. She was in her 60s, a grandmother, a retired teacher. She told me she had been practicing meditation for 20 years but felt she had nothing to show for it. She still got angry with her husband. She still worried about her children. She still felt lonely sometimes. She wondered if she had been wasting her time. I asked Helen what she thought enlightenment was supposed to look like. She described a state of perfect peace, free from all negative emotions, floating above the difficulties of life. I smiled and told her a story. There was once a Zen master who was asked, "What is the difference between an enlightened person and an unenlightened person?" The master said, "When the unenlightened person falls into the mud, they despair. When the enlightened person falls into the mud, they wash themselves off and keep walking. The difference is not in whether you fall. The difference is in how you relate to the falling. Helen had been measuring herself against an impossible standard. She thought enlightenment meant never feeling anger, never feeling lonely, never struggling. But that is not what the Buddha taught. The Buddha taught freedom from suffering, not freedom from feeling. He taught that you can feel anger without being possessed by it. You can feel loneliness without being defined by it. You can fall into the mud and still get up. This is integration. It is the slow, patient work of bringing your insights into your daily life. It is remembering your true nature when your child is screaming, when your boss is demanding, when your body is hurting. It is not about escaping the world. It is about being fully present in the world, with all its messiness, all its difficulty, all its beauty. There is a practice in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition called Lojong, or mind training. It consists of short slogans meant to be remembered throughout the day. One of my favorites is this: drive all blames into one. It means that whenever something goes wrong, whenever you feel triggered, whenever you want to blame someone else, you pause and look inward. You take full responsibility for your own reaction. You recognize that the problem is not out there. The problem is in here. And the solution is also in here. This is integration. It is taking the teachings off the cushion and into the street. It is remembering, again and again, that you are the only one who can do your work. No teacher can do it for you. No book can do it for you. No amount of experiences can do it for you. At some point, you have to show up for your own life. The 4 paths are not stages you complete. They are dimensions you inhabit. Every day, you have the opportunity to wake up a little more, to grow up a little more, to clean up a little more, to show up a little more. And every day, you will fail. That is okay. The path is not about never falling. It is about always getting back up. We have covered much ground together. But before we complete this journey, there is one more story I must tell you. It is a story about a woman named Catherine, and it holds perhaps the most important lesson of all. Catherine was a successful therapist. She had helped hundreds of people heal from trauma, rebuild their lives, find their way through the darkness. She was skilled, compassionate, deeply intuitive. But Catherine had a problem she could not solve. She was exhausted. Not physically exhausted, though that was part of it. She was existentially exhausted. She had given so much to others for so long that she had forgotten how to receive. She had spent decades cleaning up other people's basements while her own attic gathered dust. Catherine came to a mentor of mine and described her situation. She talked about her work, her clients, her sense of purpose. She talked about her spiritual practice, her meditation, her commitment to waking up. She talked about her growth, her psychological development, her expanding worldview. And then she stopped and said, "Why do I feel so empty?" The mentor looked at her for a long moment and then asked a question that changed everything. "When was the last time you let someone take care of you?" Catherine opened her mouth to answer, then closed it. She searched her memory. She could not find a single example. Not one. She had been the caretaker, the healer, the giver, for so long that she had forgotten she was also allowed to receive. This is the hidden trap on the spiritual path. We can become so focused on serving, on growing, on cleaning up, on showing up, that we forget the most fundamental truth of all. You are already whole. You are already complete. The work is not about adding anything. It is about removing the obstacles that keep you from recognizing what has always been true. The Buddha taught that enlightenment is not something you achieve. It is something you uncover. It is like the sun behind the clouds. The sun is always shining. The clouds come and go. Your job is not to create the sun. Your job is to let the clouds disperse. And sometimes, the most important thing you can do is nothing at all. Let me tell you about a man named Stephen. Stephen was a meditator, a seeker, a striver. He had done retreat after retreat, read book after book, pursued enlightenment with a determination that was almost aggressive. He was making progress. He could see that. But the progress came at a cost. He was tense. He was driven. Even his relaxation felt like a project. One day, Stephen was walking in the woods near his home. He was, as always, practicing mindfulness. Noticing his breath. Noticing the sensations in his body. Noticing the sounds around him. And then, for no particular reason, he stopped. He stopped practicing. He stopped striving. He stopped trying to be mindful. He just walked. He looked at the trees without labeling them. He felt the air without noting it. He was just there, a human being, walking in the woods. And in that moment, something broke open. Not a dramatic enlightenment experience. Not a vision or a bliss state. Just a deep, quiet recognition that he had been missing the point. The point was not to be mindful. The point was to be alive. The mindfulness was just a tool, a finger pointing at the moon. He had been so focused on the finger that he forgot to look at the moon. Stephen laughed out loud, there in the woods. He kept walking, but everything was different. The striving had fallen away. The seeking had fallen away. He was still on the path, but the path was no longer a project. It was just his life. This is the great paradox. You must do the work. You must wake up, grow up, clean up, show up. You must practice, meditate, heal, serve. But you must also remember that the work is not the point. The point is what the work reveals. And what it reveals has been there all along. Here is a Zen story about a student who asked his teacher, "What is the most important teaching?" The teacher said, "A cup of tea." The student was confused. "A cup of tea?" The teacher nodded. "When you are thirsty, drink. When you are tired, rest. When you are with someone, be with them completely. This is the whole teaching." The student said, "But surely there is more. What about enlightenment? What about liberation?" The teacher smiled. "Enlightenment is when you drink your tea and know you are drinking your tea. Liberation is when you rest and know you are resting. Everything else is commentary. You have walked far in this journey. You have learned about the paths, the stages, the work. Now comes the hardest part. You must let it all go. You must take what is useful and leave the rest. You must trust that the wisdom you need is already within you, and that these teachings are just reminders, signposts along the way. The real teacher is your own life. The real path is your own experience. Everything else is just a cup of tea. And so we arrive at the end of this journey together. But endings are also beginnings. The teaching is complete, but your work is just starting. The map has been offered, but the territory is yours to explore. Let me tell you one final story. It is about a man named Joseph, a carpenter I knew years ago. Joseph was not a spiritual teacher. He had never read a Buddhist sutra or sat through a meditation retreat. But Joseph was one of the wisest people I have ever met. He had a quality of presence that was rare, a way of being fully there, fully himself, in every moment. One day, I asked Joseph his secret. I expected some profound philosophy, some hard-won wisdom from a life of struggle. Instead, he laughed and said, "I just show up." I pressed him. "Show up for what?" He said, "For whatever is in front of me. A piece of wood. A friend in need. A meal. A problem. I just show up and do what needs doing. That's all there is." At first, I was disappointed. It seemed too simple. But over the years, I have come to see that Joseph's simplicity was not a lack of depth. It was depth itself. He had integrated everything, his wounds, his gifts, his failures, his joys, into a single, seamless way of being. He had woken up enough to know that he was more than his thoughts. He had grown up enough to take responsibility for his life. He had cleaned up enough to be at peace with his past. And he showed up, every day, for whatever life placed in front of him. This is what the Buddha pointed to when he spoke of the middle way. Not a path between extremes, but a path that includes everything. Not a rejection of the world, but a full embrace of it. Not a search for something outside yourself, but a recognition that what you are looking for is already here, hidden in plain sight. There is a teaching in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition about something called the rainbow body. It is said that the highest realization leaves no trace. The practitioner does not ascend to a heaven or dissolve into nothingness. They simply become transparent to the light. They become what they always were. And when they die, their body dissolves into rainbow light, leaving behind only their hair and nails, the grossest, most material parts. I do not know if this is literally true. But I know it is metaphorically true. The path of becoming your true self is a process of becoming transparent. You let go of the density, the heaviness, the clinging. You let go of the stories that were never really yours. You let go of the identities you borrowed from your parents, your culture, your wounds. And what remains is not nothing. What remains is everything. What remains is you, but you without the armor. You without the mask. You without the constant effort to be someone other than who you are. Now, before you go, I want to offer you something practical. A simple practice you can take with you, something to ground these teachings in your daily life. Every evening, before you sleep, take 5 minutes. Sit quietly. Review your day. Ask yourself 4 questions. First, did I wake up today? Did I have any moments of presence, any glimpses beyond my ordinary mind? Even a second of truly being here counts. Second, did I grow up today? Did I stretch beyond my usual perspective? Did I try to understand someone different from me? Did I take responsibility for my reactions? Third, did I clean up today? Did I notice any projections? Did I catch myself blaming others for something that was really mine? Did I feel a feeling I usually avoid? Fourth, did I show up today? Did I offer something genuine? Did I take a risk? Did I let myself be seen? Do not judge your answers. Do not try to improve. Just notice. Just ask the questions with curiosity, as if you were asking a friend about their day. Over time, this simple practice will weave the 4 paths into the fabric of your life. It will remind you, again and again, that this is not about perfection. It is about presence. The great Sufi poet Rumi wrote, "The thing we tell of can never be found by seeking, yet only seekers find it." This is the mystery. You cannot find yourself by searching, because you are the one doing the searching. But if you do not search, you will never stop long enough to notice what has always been here. The seeking is necessary. The effort is necessary. The practice is necessary. But the finding is not something you do. It is something you allow. So continue seeking. Continue practicing. Continue showing up. But do it with a light touch. Do it with the knowledge that you are not trying to become someone new. You are trying to become who you already are. And that person has been waiting for you, patiently, lovingly, since the very beginning. The 4 paths are now yours to walk. Waking up to the vastness of your true nature. Growing up into the fullness of your humanity. Cleaning up the wounds that have kept you small. Showing up for the life that is yours alone to live. They are not separate. They are one path, seen from 4 angles. And every step you take on any of them is a step toward wholeness. Thank you for walking with me. Thank you for your attention, your openness, your willingness to go deeper. The world needs people like you, people who are willing to do the inner work, to face the shadows, to grow up and wake up and show up. You are not doing this only for yourself. You are doing it for all of us. Every step you take toward your true self is a step that makes it easier for someone else to take theirs. May you be happy. May you be free. May you become who you truly are. And remember, what you are seeking is also seeking you. It has been calling your name since before you were born. All you have to do is turn around and listen. See you next time.